There's a moment most people never notice. A man is walking somewhere. He has things to do, places to be. And then at the edge of a parking lot or on the corner of a street, there's a cat. Thin, dirty, watching him with eyes that have already decided he's a threat. Most men keep walking. One doesn't. He crouches down, he waits, and something inside him, something he probably couldn't explain if you asked, quietly makes a decision. 3 weeks later, that cat has a name, a veterinarian, and a designated spot on the man's pillow. Society doesn't have a category for this man. It never built one. Because the story we tell about masculinity has no chapter for the guy who sees something feral and frightened and thinks, "That's mine now." Not to own, not to control, just to take care of. But science has been paying attention. And what it's found about men who make that choice is worth sitting with. First, let's be honest about what we're actually talking about. There's a difference between tossing food to an animal on your way inside and restructuring your entire life around one. Between a moment of pity and a decade of commitment. Taking in a stray is not a gesture, it's a contract, an unsigned one with no witnesses that no one asked you to make. You're agreeing to fund vet visits for an animal of unknown history. You're agreeing to rearrange your furniture, your schedule, your sleep. You're agreeing to earn the trust of a creature that may hide from you for a month, scratch you when you get too close, and offer absolutely nothing in return for your patience except the faint possibility that one day it might sit near you without leaving. That is the deal. And the man who takes it knows exactly what he's signing up for. Which means the question worth asking isn't why someone would do that. The question is, what kind of person does that without hesitation? Here's what the data says. Studies on personality consistently show that people who are drawn to cats, and especially the challenge of earning a cat's trust, score unusually high in one particular trait: openness. Not openness in the soft, agreeable sense, openness in the sense of cognitive complexity, the ability to hold contradictions, the comfort with things that are unresolved, unpredictable, and slow to reveal themselves. A stray cat is all of those things. It doesn't come with instructions, it does not respond to commands, it will not perform affection on demand. It operates entirely on its own internal logic, shaped by experiences you weren't there for, and cannot undo quickly. To love a stray cat well, you have to be the kind of person who doesn't need constant feedback, who can stay patient while progress is invisible, who can offer warmth repeatedly, without any signal that it's landing, and keep offering it anyway. Research also shows these men tend to be less driven by social approval than average, which matters more than it sounds. Because here's something worth knowing. Studies have found that men shown with cats are rated as less attractive and less masculine by outside observers. The social cost is real. These men pay it without thinking twice because something internal has already outweighed the external math. Psychologists call this identity-based motivation, acting from who you are, not from who you're being watched by. That kind of internal anchoring is genuinely rare, and it reliably predicts emotional stability, not weakness. Now here's the part that should genuinely stop you. Research out of Oregon State University found that cats form deep, measurable attachment bonds to the humans who care for them. The same researchers who had spent years mapping attachment in human infants applied those exact frameworks to cats, and the results held. Nearly 2/3 of cats studied showed what developmental psychologists call secure attachment. They used their owner as a home base. They moved through the world more confidently because of a specific person's presence. Bowlby's attachment theory, the foundational model of how trust develops in human children, mapped onto a stray cat on a second-hand couch. What that means, practically, is this. When a man brings home a cat that's never known safety and slowly, day by day, becomes a presence it can rely on, he's not just being kind. He's functioning as an attachment figure. He's doing for that animal's nervous system what a good parent does for a child's. He's teaching it, through consistency alone, that the world is not only dangerous, that is not a small thing to do for another living creature. So, what is actually driving it? Researchers point partly to something called the baby schema, a set of physical features, large eyes, rounded proportions, small frame, that evolved to trigger automatic caregiving impulses in humans. Cats activated almost perfectly. But that explains the pull, not the follow-through. Nobody signs 10 years of their life over to an instinct. What attachment researchers have observed is something more layered. Men who are specifically drawn to animals that are withdrawn, fearful, and difficult to reach, they often carry a quiet familiarity with that emotional state. Not necessarily from trauma, sometimes just from experience, from having been, at some point, the person in the room who wasn't sure yet whether it was safe to trust. They understand from the inside what it costs to let someone in slowly. And they understand, perhaps more than most, what one patient and consistent presence can do for a nervous system that's learned to brace for impact. The neuroscience confirms this is a two-way process. Physical interaction with animals produces measurable increases in oxytocin and measurable drops in cortisol. Blood pressure falls, breathing slows, the body genuinely shifts a register. For men, who studies show are significantly less likely than women to seek support, more likely to isolate when struggling, and more vulnerable to the long-term effects of loneliness, a stray cat arriving at the door is not a trivial event. It may be the first relationship in years that asks nothing of them except presence. No performance, no explanation, no proof of anything. Just show up. Be consistent. That's enough. A study out of Australia examined empathy specifically in men who had cared for animals under difficult conditions. No guaranteed outcome, no financial incentive, high emotional investment. Their empathy scores were dramatically higher than men without that experience, not marginally, significantly. The researchers identify the core driver as a specific combination: personal sacrifice, sustained responsibility, and the total presence of expected reward. Which is almost word for word a description of taking in a stray. No history, no guarantees, no return policy. Just a frightened animal and a man who decided it was worth trying anyway. And here's the piece most people miss entirely. Research has shown that the emotional character of an owner doesn't just shape how they experience the relationship. It shapes the animal itself. Cats living with owners who are emotionally stable and open in personality display fewer behavioral problems, lower chronic stress markers, and better overall well-being. The man's inner life becomes the cat's outer reality. When he's calm, the cat learns calm is possible. When he's consistent, the cat learns the flaw won't disappear. When he keeps showing up, even on the days that the cat won't look at him, the cat's nervous system quietly begins to revise its assumptions about what humans do. He's not just giving it a home, he's giving it a new story about what the world is. So, step back and look at the full picture. A man sees something that the rest of the world has walked past. Something scared, matted, and operating entirely on threat detection. He doesn't try to fix it fast. He doesn't demand that it be grateful. He doesn't need it to perform recovery on any particular timeline. He simply creates conditions in which healing becomes possible, and then he waits. He can hold something frightened without making it worse. He can absorb rejection without retaliating. He can invest deeply in something that may never fully return it, and find that worthwhile anyway. These are not traits that trend. They don't photograph well. They don't make good highlight reels. But they are precisely the traits that make someone worth knowing, worth trusting, worth building a life alongside. The culture will keep calling them man-soft. The cat will know better. And honestly, so will everyone who's ever been lucky enough to be loved by someone built like that. If this one stayed with you, leave something in the comments. Tell us about the animal you brought home or the one you still think about. And if you want to keep going deeper into what our quietest choices say about who we really are, stay with this channel. We'll keep going there.